This episode of Rick and Rick Rule the World is brought to you by Taskin, the first name in premium quality travel gear, with slim, stylish gear like the Taskin Edge professional laptop backpack for business and travel. Save 30% on your next purchase when you use promo code RNR Take 30 at TaskinSF.com. Welcome to a Rick and Quick episode of Rick and Rick Rule the World. Rick Matheson and Rick Wooten. John Sculley, he obviously was the CEO of Apple and Next Computers. He is back in the news, and this time to share his thoughts on branding in a post-pandemic world.
Yeah, I'll give you one more. You mentioned those two companies, but the third one is Pepsi.
That's right.
Yeah, he was with Pepsi when Pepsi was the underdog, and they really didn't hold a candle against Coca-Cola. And he was the one who came up with, or at least in his time, they came up with the Pepsi Challenge. And before he left, they had grown to actually be the number one beverage company above Coca-Cola. And then, of course, he went over to Apple, and Apple at the time was struggling as well. And under his leadership, they were able to really kind of recover from that. So this article from Wharton, they went to him and they said, well, what is your advice for companies? What is your advice for brands during this time frame? And the full quote is, "Don't go dark," which, if you're in marketing, you get this. It's tough because there's opportunity, and then there's protecting yourselves, and a lot of companies struggle with that. And so in a time like this, some would consider the smart move to pull back, slow your advertising, cut the budgets, hold on to your assets. But what Scully was saying is, no, see, this is an opportunity. Go charge, and your competition is more than likely going to pull back. This gives you an opportunity to take more mind share from the customers, and more importantly, he's saying, and it's a time where the cost of this media is going to drop, so your marketing dollars are going to go further, and it's a huge opportunity for you. And so I thought that was a pretty interesting approach, and pretty consistent with what he had done with other companies in his past.
Yeah, as he says, and others have said, never waste a good crisis. I think that should be obvious, but as you say, very hard to do for some companies during a tough time like this. But the other thing he talks about is rewarding loyalty. And he uses as an example, not necessarily a COVID-related one, but Amazon Prime with its added benefits, the $9 a month price tag. It doesn't seem like it'd be a huge moneymaker, but as he points out, Prime members buy 4.5 times more than the average customer. So that's another opportunity during COVID, when especially at a time when you really want people to be loyal to you, give them a reason to stick around with you and continue to use your product or service.
Absolutely. The other thing he brought up, it's kind of in a similar vein, is if you're a brand like Coke or Pepsi or Doritos or whoever that the consumers are normally seeing in doing advertising at any given point, if all of a sudden you go dark, that makes them lose some confidence in you and worry about the longevity of the company and the relationship they have with you. And so even beyond the opportunity to take more market share and to grow the business during a downturn like this, you could also lose traction, or at least consumer confidence, because you go dark.
That's for sure. Out of sight, out of mind. People are going to forget about you, or worse.
And it happens. Like, we've seen a lot of companies be hit really hard by this, and many go out of business.
Yeah. And I think about those brands. Have you ever noticed where you realize that a brand's been kind of coasting on a campaign from 20 years ago, and you never see that advertising anymore, but it's
Totally.
played up on their packaging or something. And
Totally.
I always find myself oh, they haven't done that in years. Totally coasting. Just the other day, we were getting Klondike bars or something. And I said, what would I do for a Klondike bar? And then I looked at my daughter and was like, okay, that was a TV campaign from 40, 50 years ago. I haven't seen that in years. That is the only equity it has with me. They've been coasting on that for a long time.
One of the brands that comes to mind is Aunt Jemima, and they've been in the news recently because they're talking about changing the brand for very good social reasons.
Yeah.
But what it made me realize when I started seeing them in the news is I don't remember the last time I've seen any advertising from them.
Yeah.
And so when I was at the grocery store the other day, I sought it out and found some of their pancake mix. And and to your point, it looks like they are just really have over the years allowed these historical ad campaigns to kind of carry them through, and now in this situation, much to their detriment, because it hasn't been refreshed, it isn't socially aware. And so in a time like what we have right now, they're stuck with egg on their face. Like Wonder Bread. Like when was the last time you saw a Wonder Bread commercial? And
Yeah.
so, I think a lot of these brands, they build it really big, and once they basically own a market space, they kind of go quiet and rely on the flywheel that they've built up to carry them through.
Yeah, so true. In fact, going back to Aunt Jemima, it's funny. With all the news about the rebranding, I found myself going, why did any of us think that was ever okay?
Yeah.
Playing to stereotypes that were unnecessary, and for it to be 2020, it was like, oh yeah, we should change that. We're all blind, people who are not in that demographic. Let that go way too long.
In a similar way, Land O'Lakes took action before everything that's taken place recently, and they had received enough feedback over the years that people didn't like the Indian
Yeah,
on their labels, and so they started phasing them out probably 4 or 5, 6 months ago to try and be responsible and to adapt their brand with the changing times. Like, unfortunately, Aunt Jemima didn't do that, so now
yeah,
they're getting caught in a bad situation. But to your point, we've kind of ignored most of this, and it's time to really kind of take a look and make sure that these brands are up to date with
yeah.
how we feel as a society today, and they continue to work, or else they're going to be caught flat-footed in situations like this.